I would add a more conceptual line, because my area of approach to the innovation and technology solutions is more of a conceptual nature. I usually advise on strategies. Now, and probably that would be even better, because that would balance off some of the other presentations that we would hear. I think what the most important development recently, that we are talking a lot of sustainability and security, and they have to be redefined. Because at each level of human history, all those sort of high level of theoretical base definitions have to be aligned with the technologies and understandings. In the old days, sustainability used to be the buzzword for the classic options that humanity had in accessing oil, gas, and coal. Today we have so many other options. And the good thing is that technology, one more option. And the good thing is that technology is bringing each and every day more solutions and opening new doors. And there is a dual process. On one side, it's more chaos, because it's becoming more and more difficult for people, particularly people in senior management position, to apprehend the scope of change, the potential scope of change, and particularly of the impact on their current policies, on their current structures, institutional and theoretical structures, which in turn make a lot of people believe that because of that, management, risk mitigation, and management of those many variables becomes more and more difficult. On the contrary, because it's a multitask environment with so many variables, they actually balance off a lot each other. And as a consequence, we have a more predictable environment when it comes to spelling our energy future. For example, and it does not pertain only to renewables, the new sort of kids on the block. All of a sudden, we are discovering that the old guys are very resilient, because innovation and new technological breakthroughs are coming in coal as well, in oil as well, in gas as well, at a pace that is very difficult to have been predicted even some years ago. Look at what is happening with shale oil, for example, or shale gas. Price of oil go down to 70, and the people are still smiling. The number of drilling platforms have been cut in half, yet the production is almost the same. Dropping, but which means that technology is the defining moment. It is not sort of the old adage of saying that, okay, anything that is classic oil would, and the classic method would win long term. On top of that, if you ask the Saudis or the Qataris where their strategy would work against the shale, they are not that optimistic anymore, because it seems that because of the pace of technology and the dramatic, it's almost, can you imagine the production costs in certain years between 2012 and 2013 have dropped by 20%. And it's not solely because people are so innovative, basically in finding new methods. No. It's just optimizing, having new systems, new approaches. So, and that is gas. I can speak a lot about coal as well. It is just to mention that the old adage that coal is an old retired person that is definitely going to pass away, and we would send him with honors, it is not as quick. Why? Because it's not so on the apprehension that we need to change into a new future with renewable energy topping our list is because our capacity to adapt and to absorb change is limited, but our ability to withstand change within our welfare range of the permissible, so to say. Then we also need to understand that certain things, even in oil, for example, will not happen. There's a lot of talk, and that has been, or will not happen that as quick as hoped. For example, there's a lot of talk about the Arctic, the new geography, and the new axis. If you have the Arctic production at $150 per barrel, then it would not happen, definitely, regardless of who is in charge. And that is the good thing about this multi-variable in our energy equation that we have with renewables, with new geography in oil and gas, and all the traditional and new fuels, and technology bringing new opportunities that have never emerged. The same thing is that actually what is the most difficult to predict is how demand would happen and the structure of the new demand. Because we are still sort of moved by the old system of centralized generation. Even if you look at the renewables, they are trying to mirror the classic sort of big power generation capacity in big wind farms or solar parks, and then using the transmission system. Actually, that is not their forte. The original forte is when you apply renewables at the level of the consumer. Then you don't need to depend that much on the transmission and transport system. But because they were introduced trying to mirror or trying to or mimic the behavioral pattern of the classic energy, then that was the first wave. Therefore, whether demand would evolve and would require more centralized generation, which is a big if, and I am rather skeptical of that, or instead would actually depend very much on the prosumer, the new consumer turned producer, at a consumer level, that would have immense impact not only on the how the energy systems would develop, but it would actually open the doors wide open for new innovation and technology progress that so far we are trying to shy away. Because why? We're still dependent on the big guys and the big systems. The old myth, therefore, of peaks, peak oil, peak gas, have to be taken with a grain of salt. And we will see a new generation. It is very easy for politicians to say that the world will move in one direction or another. It's a lot more difficult to see that mission and that vision apply to people, particularly when you have to close down with, as you know, there's a deindustrialization process. As a consequence, industrial assets have shifted and regroup into new formats. And for whole areas, just closing down a single, as in Poland and Romania and in Bulgaria, we have our greatest generation plant is a TPP called Maritsa East, which gives directly, on it depends the welfare of 60,000 people, both directly involved and their families. Now, you could be the greatest innovator in trying to bring renewables into the area, which makes sense actually, by the way, as an alternative. But if you do it outright, then you would do nothing basically, because there's no substitute, there's no industry, and therefore it's very difficult to actually to implement the best solution to a very practical situation. I would not go into the climate change and the hypes in this sort of policies that are assumed every now and then, because actually they're detrimental to the whole issue of the change. Because climate climate change is an essential part of not only of governmental policies, of corporate policies, but also individual behavioral pattern. And there's no harm in overhyping sometimes the dangers. It's simply when you put the public opinion in stress mode, it often adopts suboptimal decisions. Therefore, there has to be a very in-depth and solid way in which you address these issues. And finally, I just wanted to make a point which I've always, whatever we do, by trying to engage in visionary planning and planning what the future would come. There's one conclusion that I've reached. It's hopeless to try to outwit the future technologies and innovations by making grand decisions today. And that was a lesson I learned, in particular trying to work on the new nuclear power plant in Belene. And nuclear energy is exactly such a thing. You take a decision today when you invest the money of your generation, the next generation, and probably the generation afterwards. Because you believe that you are the best mind for those guys for the next 60 years or even more. In a world of so many things happening at one at the same time, with so many options, of so many opportunities, to put all your eggs in one basket is becoming a more and more irrelevant and difficult to substantiate judgment. Therefore, my sort of recommendation, my moral, the lesson I learned is that don't try to outwit future. Even technologies, the future is always wiser than today. And the strategy is keep your options open so that at any time in the future, you are the first to react, to understand, and to grasp the trend, and therefore apply it into strategy and therefore policies. Thank you.